Yet another provocation by North Korea, the second in just 2 days, firing 2 ballistic missiles in its latest show of protest against ongoing Seoul-Washington joint drills. U.S. President Joe Biden reassures Americans of the safety of the banking system even in the wake of the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and the fears of contagion. Despite posting a trade surplus last month, South Korea's exports are falling notably due to declining outbound shipments of chips and displays. Good afternoon. Let's get right into the details on North Korea's firing of 2 ballistic missiles earlier this morning. This is the regime's second provocation in 2 days in an apparent protest against the ongoing Seoul-Washington joint drills. For more, we connect live to our defense correspondent Kim Yeon-sung standing by at the Defense Ministry. Yeon-sung, what else are we learning so far?
South Korea's military from 7:41 a.m. to 7:51 a.m. Tuesday local time detected 2 short-range ballistic missiles fired off to the east. They were fired from Heukharang province on the peninsula's west coast and flew for 620 kilometers before landing in the East Sea. That's a distance that puts the south of the Korean peninsula well within range if launched from Heukharang province. Seoul and Washington's intelligence authorities are currently analyzing the details of the launch. The JCS added in a statement that North Korea's consecutive missile launches are serious acts of provocation and a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. It is demanding an immediate stop to these actions. It also said that it has strengthened watch and vigilance for any possible extra launches and that it's working closely with its U.S. ally to maintain full readiness. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command also said that it is aware of the recent ballistic missile launches and that these actions highlight the destabilizing impact of North Korea's weapons programs. It also gave assurances that U.S. commitments to the South Korea's and Japan's defense remain ironclad.
Right, and this comes just a few days after North Korea's previous missile test, right?
Yes, that's right, Kelvin. North Korea fired 2 submarine-launched missiles on Sunday, claiming that they were strategic cruise missiles. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said to reporters on Monday that the U.S. is analyzing North Korea's recent submarine-launched cruise missile tests and their capabilities. Pyongyang has been stepping up its weapons test and fiery tone as a clear protest against the Seoul-Washington military exercises recently. The Freedom Shield, the largest joint drill between the allies in 5 years, kicked off Monday, and it lasts for 11 days. It's going to run through some realistic war scenarios and computer-based simulations and extensive field training that factors in the up-to-date progress of North Korea's weapons capabilities. The U.S. is also expected to deploy its strategic assets, some of its most formidable weapons that could include nuclear-capable aircraft, which North Korea has reacted particularly sensitive about.
All right, thank you, Yeon-sung, for the reporting. Now, just hours before the latest missile launch, Washington said it is still studying what North Korea claims to be submarine-launched cruise missiles fired over the weekend. And it warned that North Korean provocations only push the U.S. to reinforce security commitment. Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Monday that Washington has no other choice but to intensify joint military drills with South Korea as North Korea continues to make provocations that threaten its allies as well as the American troops stationed in the country. His comments come as the North fired what are thought to be strategic cruise missiles from a submarine on Sunday, while Pyongyang continues to call the annual Freedom Shield joint military exercise invasion preparation. Price stressed again that the drills are routine and defensive in nature. Instead, the spokesperson argued that it's North Korea's continued provocations that are forcing both the U.S. and its allies to intensify their military drills. Also speaking to reporters on board Air Force One on Monday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan slammed North Korea's recent missile launches, stressing Pyongyang's provocations will not prevent the U.S. from maintaining peace on the Korean peninsula. Sullivan said Washington is continuing to analyze the latest submarine-launched cruise missile launches in terms of capability, adding that the North first tested a submarine-launched missile in 2016. When asked if the recent provocations marked a new capability, Sullivan said the North has been refining and trying different iterations of submarine-launched missiles. And as questions remain over whether or not the North will eventually conduct a seventh nuclear test, the State Department stressed that such action would constitute a dangerous provocation that would require a response by the United Nations Security Council. According to Price, the North has already finalized all of the steps needed to conduct another nuclear test. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Biden administration is seeking a record size of defense budget for next year focused on advancing its nuclear capabilities and missile defense with a, quote, laser focus on countering China. According to the Defense Department on Monday, the $842 billion budget has $38 billion set aside for modernizing nuclear weapons and systems. The budget also requests some $30 billion to enhance missile defense, which includes some $1.5 billion in protecting Guam against China's missile threat. Funds for developing and procuring hypersonic missiles is also part of the plan. Now turning over to the Silicon Valley Bank crisis. U.S. President Joe Biden reassures the public of the safety of the banking system. His remarks come a day after his administration announced major action to guarantee all deposits at the SVB to fight fears of contagion among other banks. Our Han Sung-woo tells us more.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday local time pledged stiffer bank regulations after the nation's regulators were forced to impose emergency measures following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Biden said Americans can be confident that the banking system is safe and that their deposits will be there when they need them.
That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers.
He added that the managers of these banks will be fired and that investors would lose money, saying they knowingly took a risk. Noting that the Dodd-Frank law passed after the 2008 financial crisis to prevent excessive risk-taking had been partially rolled back under former President Donald Trump, Biden also vowed to ask Congress and banking regulators to strengthen bank rules. But that's not an easy task, considering the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives in January. Citing a Signature Bank board member, CNBC reports that the bank's customers, shocked by the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, withdrew more than $10 billion in deposits on Friday, leading to the third largest bank failure in U.S. history. Meanwhile, shares in banks in Europe and Asia sank on Monday before the U.S. market opened, while U.S. stock index futures were down even with some investors betting on the Federal Reserve pausing its interest rate hikes. S&P 500 futures were down 0.7%, seemingly taking little comfort from Biden's remarks. Due to the Silicon Valley Bank crisis, several analysts project the Federal Reserve will likely leave interest rates untouched at next week's Federal Open Market Committee meeting, The Guardian reports. As recently as last week, before the collapse, a rate hike of 0.5 percentage points had been expected after Fed Chair Jerome Powell warned that more hikes would be needed to tame inflation. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea will continue to closely monitor the fallout from the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, as its impact seems to be limited but is still hard to forecast. During a meeting with financial authorities on Tuesday, asset liability structures adopted by Korea's financial institutes are different from SVB, said Chu Kyung-ho, finance minister, and domestic banks and investment firms have minimal exposure to SVB. However, he added the government will still brace for any possibility as volatility and uncertainty remains. Staying with the domestic economy, despite posting a trade surplus last month, South Korea's exports fell notably due to declining outbound shipments of chips and displays. Our Moon Arirang tells us more.
Data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Tuesday show that the country's ICT exports fell by 32% on-year in February to some $12.8 billion. However, the country's trade imports in February also fell, dropping 3.6% to stand at $11 billion, leaving a trade surplus of $1.8 billion. This is the 8th consecutive month in which tech exports for the country have shown an on-year fall, although the decline eased slightly compared to the more than 33% fall in January. The slowing economy and sluggish demand for semiconductors contributed to the slump in exports. Shipments of semiconductors fell on-year by 41.5%, with memory chips such as DRAM affected the most heavily, declining by over 50% compared to the same month last year. The price drop for DRAM chips was a key factor, with prices steadily falling to under $2 for an 8GB chip, down from around $3 in the first half of last year. Outbound shipments of displays and computers also showed a downturn, falling by 42.2% and 58.6% respectively on-year. Display exports have been showing an on-year decline since June last year, owing to the fall in LCD prices and slowing demand for OLED screens. Exports of mobile phone products fell 5.5% on-year, but performance varied drastically by region, with the release of new mobile phone models, meaning mobile phone exports to China were up and exports to the US increased by more than 73%. However, China's slow economic growth meant total exports to China fell, despite the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. South Korea's exports to Vietnam, the European Union and Japan also fell on-year, with a notable drop in the semiconductor sector. This report comes amid concerns that Korea's semiconductor exports may be affected by efforts from Washington to curb chip sales to China. 문혜련, Arirang News.
The market share gap between the world's largest contract chip maker TSMC and number 2 Samsung Electronics continues to widen. According to a TrendForce survey of the global foundry market on Monday, South Korea's Samsung Electronics posted foundry revenue of almost $5.4 billion for the fourth quarter of 2022, down 3.5% from the quarter before. The company's market share recovered slightly to 15.8% in the fourth quarter from the 15.5% in the third, but it still fell short of the 16.4% recorded in the second quarter. Meanwhile, Taiwan-based TSMC's market share increased to 58.5% in the fourth quarter of 2022, increasing the share gap with Samsung Electronics to 42.7%. South Korea's import prices rose for the first time in 4 months last month, driven by rising international oil prices and the falling value of local currency against the US dollar. According to Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the import prices in February increased 2.1% a month as the price of Dubai crude rose 2.1%. In the meantime, the value of Korean won fell against US dollar by an average of almost 2% in February compared to the previous month. Along with import prices, export prices also saw an on-month increase for the first time in 4 months, up 0.7% from a month earlier. It is becoming more expensive to have fun in South Korea, with the prices of traveling, online streaming, and other forms of entertainment now higher than ever. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the related consumer prices for entertainment activities in February increased 4.3% on-year, the biggest jump in 14 years, mainly because of increased post-pandemic activities. The cost of group travel increased by the most by 9.3% on the back of the recovery in domestic and international tourism. The prices of pet-related services and products also went up notably, while online streaming platform fees increased about 3%. Prices related to camping, sports, and movies also all went up. Farmers in southwestern Korea are counting on their newly grown lettuce to drive up their profits. Because this Heukharang, a local variety rich in properties that make you fall asleep, they're perfect as a source of natural sleep aids. Our Cho Sung-min has this report.
This is a type of lettuce called Heukharang. They're grown locally and organically as part of a joint venture between a group of farmers and the Jeollanam-do Province Agricultural Agency. Farmers say they've chosen to grow lettuce because they're cost-effective and show higher yields compared to other vegetables.
From our harvesting experience, we could see they produce economically higher value per square meter of land than other produce, which helps increase profits.
A total of 11 designated farms specialize in producing these lettuces, which have shown to contain 24 times the amount of lactucin compared to normal kinds, a type of natural property abundant in lettuce leaves known to have sedative effects. That's why in Korea, it is said that eating lettuce makes you sleepy. The lettuces grown here are sourced for various health supplements and products sold in more than a dozen department stores nationwide. And the farmers believe there's an even bigger opportunity to be seized here.
It started as a project to differentiate locally grown produce from others, and as the Nagoya Protocols were issued in 2012, the importance of such practical resources spiked, and that's how Jeollanam-do decided to grow one of its own.
There are currently over 20 ways the lettuce can be used, from its stems to the leaves, in making a variety of products ranging from tea to juice, powder, and fermented jelly. The products are also being shipped to China, Japan, and France, and are being ready to be sent to around a dozen more countries.
Heukharang was organically certified by the US and the USDA, and also registered for FDA.
Locally, farmers say they're hoping their products can benefit some 640,000 people who struggle to sleep at night. The market size of lettuce-based natural sleep aids is expected to grow at least 5% every year, and they believe that Heukharang can be the main source. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
After several years of hiatus due to the pandemic, Gwangyang Maehwa Festival is finally back. It is one of the most popular festivals here in the country and lets you know that spring is here. Our Kim Jung-sil went to the country's far south and files this report.
White, pink, and red Maehwa flowers decorate the mountains. Visitors head to the Gwangyang Maehwa village in Gwangyang City, Jeollanam-do Province every March to see the plum blossoms. The festival, a must-visit for flower lovers, came back bigger than ever after the pandemic. This weekend alone, some 170,000 people visited this village.
For many people in South Korea, these Maehwa flowers or plum blossoms represent spring. And with this festival being held for the first time in 4 years, tens of thousands of people from all over the place have come here to enjoy the spring.
I think this festival is beautiful. I've never seen so many Maehwa flowers because we don't really have many in the United States. So being here and seeing so many and having a beautiful day, it's just been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, we always wanted to come to this countryside. Because we've been around the city area, but it's just so beautiful, the river, and the weather's been really nice today.
And the flowers smell amazing.
I was a bit exhausted from all the traffic, but when I actually got here and saw the flowers, they were much more magnificent than what I imagined. This is the first family trip in a while, so it's been such a great day.
I also had a great day.
The Maehwa flowers haven't just brought smiles to the visitors. Faces of local vendors also lit up with orders pouring in for the first time in 4 years. Visitors can enjoy plum-flavored candy and ice cream and also buy other products to take back home, like Maehwa flower seedlings and gochujang made with plums. The city officials say the entire city is basically a festival site, as anywhere people go, there will be Maehwa flowers in one way or another. The festival runs until Sunday, March 19th, when the flowers begin to fall. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News, Gwangyang.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Southeast Africa, dozens have been killed and many more injured in the wake of a massive storm. According to officials in Malawi on Monday, at least 99 people have been confirmed dead and dozens have been hospitalized after Cyclone Freddy hit the country's southern region at the weekend. A state of disaster has been declared and the death toll is expected to climb as rescuers continue to search for survivors. The cyclone has been recorded as one of the strongest of its kind to hit the region, bringing torrential rains and causing landslides. And according to the World Meteorological Organization, the storm is one of the most powerful to hit the southern hemisphere and could be the longest-lasting tropical cyclone ever recorded. Cyclone Freddy has lasted over 34 days, hitting neighboring Mozambique twice and Madagascar once, where it killed over 30 people and displaced thousands. Meanwhile, over to Iran, where the government says that it has issued pardons to tens of thousands of people. According to state media on Monday, citing judicial officials, some 22,000 people arrested amid recent nationwide anti-government protests were among those granted amnesty. Officials added that more than 82,000 in total had been pardoned and that none had committed theft or violent crimes, but they did not provide further details. There has also been no independent confirmation of the mass release. State media had already reported that the country's supreme leader was set to pardon those involved in the demonstrations ahead of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Mass protests followed the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in September last year after she was detained by Iran's morality police for not wearing a hijab correctly. Turning over to the US, where President Joe Biden on Monday greenlit a controversial oil drilling project in Alaska. Called the Willow Project, it's set to be built inside the state's National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska, and could produce 180,000 barrels of oil per day, which would account for 1.5% of total US oil production. While supporters have called the project an economic lifeline for the community, the plan has been opposed by environmentalists and some Alaskan Native communities. This over fears of its impact on the climate and wildlife. The approval comes a day after the U.S. government announced that some other areas in Alaska and the Arctic Ocean would be indefinitely off limits for oil and gas drilling. And finally, elephants were the main focus in Thailand on Monday as the nation marked National Elephant Day. In a special ceremony held at the Nongnuch Tropical Gardens, elephants living there were treated to a 3-ton feast of fruits and vegetables spread out over an 8-meter table. The elephants also participated in a special ceremony where they were blessed by Buddhist monks. The animal is culturally and historically significant in Thailand, where elephants have played a role in transportation and were even used in ancient warfare. Thailand had its first National Elephant Day in 1998, when the government declared that March 13th be observed for the conservation of Thai elephants. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After a chilly start, temperatures are rebounding quite nicely along with warm southwesterly winds, meaning temperature gaps between lows and highs can be as wide as 15 degrees Celsius. You know, it's easy to come down with a cold around this time, so please take good care of yourself. Afternoon temperatures are going up about 7 to 8 degrees higher than yesterday in most parts, and southern regions are seeing highs near 20 degrees Celsius this afternoon. But also please drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. A dry weather advisory has been reissued in some parts of Korea, including here in Seoul. Skies have gotten brighter with normal to good air quality nationwide, so it's a good day for an afternoon walk. But be mindful of more up and down temperatures. Meanwhile, strong wind is expected through tomorrow, blowing in excess of 25 meters per second, which is strong enough to uproot trees. Take precautionary measures to secure your property. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.